My child was only 12 years old. What did he know about the protest? Jacinta Onyango asks. She shows us some of Fred's drawings. He was compiling a scrapbook for his artwork. His desire was to get a scholarship and eventually sell his work. He was shot during protests in a neighborhood on the outskirts of Nairobi.
Art was his passion, and that's what drove him. He would often tell us that his talent would take him to the US, where the best art schools are. He would also say that one day he would get us out of poverty.
The anti-tax protests started peacefully, but quickly escalated. Police used tear gas, water cannon, and live bullets. Videos of police firing at unarmed protesters were circulated widely online. The worst incident happened right outside Parliament when the demonstrators overran the building. There were more protests in other parts of the country as well. Edwin Ouma is recovering from a gunshot wound in Kisumu and Western Kenya. He says this will not deter his resolve.
When I get better, I will still go back to the streets because they haven't dealt with the high cost of living.
There's still a huge presence of security forces in the city center and other neighborhoods. Many Kenyans say the police must be held accountable for what happened and the victims must get justice. Rights activists are compiling such incidents to file a case to the Police Oversight Commission. They say the evidence is irrefutable.
We can definitely say, without any shred of a doubt, that there was clear excessive use of force by the police. And not just excessive use, but actually fatal force.
But back at Onyango's home, all his mother wants is to mourn her son, bury him honorably, and have the police officer who shot him put in jail. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera, Nairobi.
Live now to another of our correspondents in Kenya, Zein Basravi, who's near the parliament in Nairobi. The Independent Human Rights Commission, Zein, has come up with an updated number of the people killed, those abducted during last week's violence. Tell us about their findings.
That's correct. Where we are was the scene in the last 2 weeks of violent clashes between protesters and police that often turn deadly. We'll just pan the camera to show you how the police presence is still very, very heavy today. 2 weeks since the protests began, the list of demands have evolved from the protesters. It was tax bill, then spending cuts. They wanted end to corruption. They were chanting, "Ruto must go." But now they want justice for what happened to them at the hands of the security forces during those protests that took place over the course of 2 weeks. The Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, as you say, has said that the protests were largely peaceful, that the response from the police and the security forces was disproportionate and heavy-handed. They say that the death toll now stands at 39 for the number of people killed across the country in these demonstrations, 361 injuries, 627 arrests. Those arrests were short-lived. People were processed and then let go. But what's very disturbing is that there are 32 people that the Human Rights Commission says remain in involuntary disappearance, which means they've been picked up, there's been no due process, their families don't know where they are, and there's no concept of how soon they'll be released. There were 6 national associations, rights bodies, medical associations, workers' unions, who have come out and said that these were human rights violations, and they have protested the lives lost, and they say that there needs to be more done to combat the brutalities and what they describe as unacceptable overreach by the Ruto government in recent weeks.
And we're expecting more protests today, Tuesday. Zein, how are things likely to pan out? Are we expecting as big a crowds as we did see last week?
Well, it's been exactly 2 weeks since these protests began, as I said, and we are seeing a very heavy police presence once again today. There was some hope that after the events of the last 2 weeks, after the severe number of dead, the dozens killed, the funerals took place, there was some hope that things would begin to die down after the tax bill was withdrawn. But we have seen a renewed call by organizers on social media for people to come out and protest, and that is largely being fueled, the anger is being fueled by a town hall style interview that President William Ruto gave to journalists just 2 days ago, in which he did not back down. He reaffirmed, saying that he defended his tax bill, he defended the police response, and downplayed the number of dead. And that has renewed the anger of protesters. We're once again seeing a heavy police presence. We're seeing Red Cross ambulances here. We're seeing more and more police in riot gear arrive to these locations, and the amount of cars, civilian vehicles, pedestrians on the roads in downtown Nairobi is a lot less than it normally would be on a day like today. And if that's any indication that people are expecting large crowds to form again in the central part of the capital.
And we'll keep a close eye on the situation there with you. Zein Basravi, live in Nairobi.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.